Hi, so in this video we're going to make a navbar using Tailwind CSS for the layout and NextJS as the React framework of choice. Now it's going to look something like this. You can see the navbar up here. You can navigate to different pages, 1, 2, 3, and also you get a little red line indicator showing which page you're on. And finally, if I zoom it to a mobile size screen, then you get this little hamburger menu. The first link remains active, the others are hidden, and they go into your little hamburger menu. You can still click them as you would. So that's the basic layout that we're going to make. So in a previous video, we had covered how to sort of lay out a page like this, where to put the navbar code, where to put the footer, and so on. And so I'm not going to cover that in a lot of detail, but I will go over it quickly. But in this video, I'm just going to focus on getting the navigation bar right, because in the previous video, we had not done this underlining and the mobile readiness and so on. And so that's the part we're going to cover right now, even though I will cover the basic setup very, very quickly. And if you want details of the basic setup process, then you can go to the previous video. And of course, the link will be in the description. Right, so just going over the basic setup. The index file is right here. This is the first file that is displayed when you first open the web page. It's a basic, straightforward React component. It's called home. It returns basically a class which has some padding and some Tailwind configuration here. It is a flexbox, a flex column based padding of 12. But basically, it is using the NextJS image component, which I'm importing right here, to display the one.jpg at a width and a height. And it's shown on the screen, and that's page number 1 over here. And the page number 2, as you can imagine, looks exactly the same, except that in this case you get the second JPG, and the page 3 looks the same, except that the file name is different. And these are the 3 pages. And of course, because we are in Next.js, although these are React component, but we are in the Next.js framework, and so no routing is required. As soon as you put them in the pages folder, they become available, and their routes are, for 1, it is basically just the default. For 2, it is /2, and for 3, it is /3, and that's because these files are called 2 and 3. So that's all basic pages over here, nothing fancy so far. And of course, the underscore app file comes with the framework. When you first do a create Next.js project, this comes bundled in, it's already there, but we have added this extra layout component and enclosed the basic component in it. And this I explained in the previous video as well. What it does is it passes anything that goes through this to the layout component as a children's prop. And the impact is that the control gets passed to this file over here, which I have in the components folder called layout. And it takes the children and just spits it out exactly as it is, doesn't change it in any way. But because every page now goes through this mechanism, you can add something on top and bottom of the page, typically a navbar at the top and a footer at the bottom. And these files are right here. The footer is very straightforward. It just shows text and code. Again, it's in a flex box. The background is slate. There's a margin on the top, padding, and the text is small. Again, these are standard Tailwind classes. And as a result, text and code gets displayed on all the pages wherever I go. So it's right there over there. But the file that we want to focus on is the nav file, right? So that's being called from the layout on the top so that it is shown on the top of every single page. And this file has a lot of code. So we are going to basically deconstruct this code and then rebuild it again and show you exactly how this whole thing is working. So now focusing on the nav.js file, there's a lot going on over here. But the basic layout is that within the return statement, we have this giant div which encloses everything. And within that, we have 2 basic divs. One is on the left-hand side, which has the menu items on the left. And the other one contains basically the mobile menu, the hamburger icon, and everything else that goes with it. So for now, I'm just going to get rid of this mobile menu so that you can focus on the last screen. And if I do that, and if I save it, we'll see that this still works. You can still navigate because the left side items are still there. But now if I go to a smaller screen, you no longer get the hamburger menu because of course we've taken that code out, and we'll add that back later. But for now, let's just focus on this. And going back to our code, let's also get rid of some of the other links. So we just have the link 1 for now, and I'm just going to get rid of link 2 and 3 so we can talk through this. And if I do this, as you can imagine, I now have only this link over here, which will take me to 1, but I can't go back anymore. Now for a second, if I get rid of this one as well, then you will be just left with the large div over here. And just going through this, it is a flex holder, and it says justify between, and that's the key over here. It has the background black and a text of white. But what the justify between means is that any divs which are contained within it, they will be equivalent spaces within it. Now, this is required because we're going to have exactly 2 divs in there. And if I just add some 2 dummy divs for now, just to show you how this works. So div called 1 and another div called 2. Then if I show you right now, what's going to happen is that one is on the left and one is on the right. Okay. And that's because of this justify between. Now, if there was a third one, just for curiosity, if you were curious what goes on after that, then it doesn't really look exactly the way you would expect perhaps. Then you get 1 on this side, 2 on this, because the spacing is between, and so it requires it implements equal spacing between all the divs that are contained within it. But because we have only 2, we can use it to basically push one set completely to the left and one set completely to the right. And that's the kind of layout that we're looking for. And that's why we use the justify between. So that's the basic layout. But now instead of 1, I'm just going to delete this. And instead of that, I'm going to put a navigation link here, which looks like this. So basically it's a div, class name is mx4. This gives you margin of 4 on the x-axis, as this is the Tailwind class. And within that, we have a simple link with an href of slash, and it says 1, O-N-E-1. It can say anything, of course, but basically it is pointing towards our base URL, which is href is equal to L. Now it still says 1 now, but now it is a navigation link. Sorry, I have to save it first. If I just save it, it has now become a navigation link. So you get the hand icon. And of course, we are already on page 1. But if we were on page 2, then we could use this link to go to page 1, right? So this is just a simple navigation link for now. And let's just add a couple more of these and add for 2 and 3 as well, like so. So this one we'll call 2 and also point it at /2, importantly. And this one we'll call, because you can call it anything you like, but unless you change the href, of course, it will not go there. And we'll just say 3. And if I save this now, you get the 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, and 3. But notice that they are vertical, and that's because I haven't put them in any kind of a class over here, which will make them horizontal. So let's just make this class name equal to flex. And by doing that, this particular set will now be in a flex box. And so it will be nice and horizontal, just the way we want. And because we had this mx4 space in all of them, that's why they're a little separated, along the x-axis from each other. So this is working fine, but it does not show which page you're on, which is one of the things that we wanted to do. This 2, by the way, is because of what we put in the second div over here. So I'm just going to leave it alone for now. In fact, let's just call it this to avoid any confusion. Right. So this is a placeholder for our mobile menu. We'll add that later, but these are working. The next thing we want to do is we want to show the user which page you're actually on by adding some kind of a highlighter to the page, right? So let's do that next. So in order to do that, we need something called a router. Now, I just mentioned that in Next, you don't actually need a router. In fact, you need a use router hook, which is something that Next provides. So I've got already import statement over here, import use router, and I've already got a variable called router, which can be called anything, of course, which is of the type use router hook, right? So we haven't used this, which is why it's grayed out so far. And now we're just going to go ahead and use it. What it'll do is it'll tell us which page we are on. And so based upon that logic, we will be able to do something with the link of the page that we're on. It'll make sense in a minute, just hold on. So basically for now, we have a class name that only says mx4, but we want to add some logic to it. So the first thing we do is we enclose this mx4 in braces so that we can add some code to it right here, right? So that like that. We also add a little space here because we're going to add more things to it based upon some logic, and we want to make sure that there's a space between that and this class. I'm just going to open up some space, paste in some code, and then explain it to you. So I just paste this in, and basically this is a tertiary operator, right? So it is going to generate a string which will be appended to the mx4 string, which is why we had the space here. And basically what it's saying is, look, router.pathname, which tells us the page that we are currently on. Now, although we are in the nav.js component, but the basic page to which we are there, the name of that page will be contained in router.pathname. And if it is equal to /, which is the index page, question mark, then if it's true, then apply this thing, which is a border, bottom border of width 2 and of red 500 color. And if you're not on this page, then don't do anything. Then just, don't apply anything. So by doing this, if I save it now and I go back to my page, I'm on 3 right now, so nothing is displayed. But if I go to 1, you see the little red underline right here, right? It doesn't show up for 2 because we haven't added that yet. It doesn't show up for 3. But it does disappear when you navigate away from 1. And that's because as soon as we navigate, this becomes false. And as soon as it becomes false, it goes to the thing after the colon, right? So I'm going to do the same thing to the second link now. And this time I'm just going to type it out so you can follow along. The first thing is to add curly braces outside of the quotation marks because we are going to add some logic. And so this makes it possible to add logic into the HTML directly. Then I just open up some space so you see what's going on. I don't need so much space, but this is just for clarity. I'm going to add to this string, which is already there. I'm going to add a little space here so that whatever string I concatenate over here doesn't sort of jam onto this. There has to be a space in between, so I just add that space. And now the logic part. I'll open up a parenthesis, contain everything between these, and I say, look, router dot path name, check which page we are on basically. And if it happens to be equal to /2, because that's the link we are on right now, right? So it says 2, and that's the one we want to match. If it is the case, question mark, then apply a formatting that we want. Now, the formatting doesn't have to be a border. This time, just for the fun of it, let's just say text purple 500 and see what that looks like. And so if question mark, if it's true, then apply this. And if it is false, then colon, don't apply anything. And that's the end of it, right? And just get rid of this extra spacing here and extra spacing here. And if I just save it now and I go back, I see that if it's on page 2, it is highlighted in purple. If it's on page 1, then 1 is underlined. If it's on page 2 is highlighted in purple. 3, nothing is happening so far because I haven't applied anything yet. And let's just do that next. So now I'm going to take a little shortcut and just copy this onto the third one. Well, let's just copy the whole thing. It's easier. So copy like this, put this here, except that in this case, we are looking for 3, not 2, right? So I'm going to match it with 3. And if it is the case, the 3 will turn purple. So let's see how that looks like. There you go. So now we have 1 underlined, 2 is purple, and 3 is purple. Now, I showed the purple just to show you that anything can be applied, but of course, let's just go back to our red underline for consistency and it'll look better. So I'm just going to copy paste this here. And again, the point is that you can apply any style from Tailwind that you like. It doesn't have to be, the red border. I've just chosen that for aesthetic purposes, but knock yourself out. Do whatever you want. And so if I do it like this now, then you get a nice clean look. Whichever link you're on is underlined. So that part is done. The next thing to do is to add the mobile menu on the right hand side. So let's do that next. So as soon as we start thinking about the mobile menu, the first thing we want to do is that if I go into mobile mode, smaller screen, then 2 and 3 should disappear before the burger menu appears, right? And they're not disappearing yet. So let's fix that first of all. And that's fairly easy because you go into the class name and Tailwind provides us a nice hidden keyword. And so I'm just going to make it hidden. But if it is screen size medium or bigger, then you just make it flex, which is going to override the hidden, right? So it's going to be hidden until the screen size is at least this much. Do the same thing with this one, hidden and MD flex. So by saving this now, if it's in the small screen mode, then 1 is still visible, but 2 and 3, as you can see, are hidden. And if you go big, then they become visible. So far, so good. So again, we're going to move step by step. And so these couple of dashes which are appearing on the right hand side, first we'll just replace these with the Hamburger menu, which doesn't do anything, but we'll just put the menu in there. And for that, we'll use something called hero icons. Now, if you're not familiar with these are a set of icons from the makers of Tailwind. They are free. You can go to heroicons.com. And as you can see, there's a lot of icons over here. And there are various ways to use it, but they also come with a built-in React and Vue library. And so you can just install this library. That's what I've done. So run this npm install at rate of heroicons/react in your terminal. And if you do that, then it'll get installed, right? So do that first, and you will run this in the terminal. And once you've done that, then this statement, add this statement, it's already there in my case, and I'm just going to import something called the menu icon, which is the icon that we'll be using from hero icons react/solid, right? So add this line to the code. And by the way, don't worry, the entire code for this video is going to be on GitHub, so you can just refer to it later on. And after doing that, I'm just going to replace this with a bit of code here and then explain it. So we still have the enveloping div because everything has to be in a secondary div so that it's pushed on the right hand side. But it has some interesting properties. It is hidden for bigger screens because we only want to show it. So if its screen is bigger than medium, then it'll be hidden. But for small screens, it will be visible. It has absolute positioning. So this is important. Now, absolute positioning means that it is not positioned relative to the parent, but it is positioned relative to the screen. And it has a right margin of 0. So it will be pushed all the way to the right hand side. And I'll explain in the end why this is necessary. Right now, it might look a little extraneous, but it will be required because of the way we want to build the menu. The background is black. I think this is just a typo. And within this, we have a class, which is flex justifier at the end. We have a padding on the right hand side of 2. And within this, we have this menu icon, right? So let's just talk about this for a second. This is coming through because we have imported this from the hero icons. And as soon as we do that, we get this nice little hamburger menu here. And so this icon is coming from hero icons. But we also have some functionality in here. We have an on-click function over here. And what is it doing? But because we want to keep track of whether it has been clicked or not, right now, nothing is going to happen because I haven't built it yet. But basically, we want to keep track of whether it's been clicked or not. And so we have a state variable defined already over here, which is called show mobile menu, right? It's using the use state hook, and it is false by default. But as soon as you click it, then the set mobile menu becomes not set show mobile menu becomes not show mobile menu. So the value is flipped. If it's true, it becomes false. If it's false, it becomes true. And we'll just use it in the next step. So just hold on to that thought for a second. Other than that, the class has a height and a width of 5 and 5. That's for the menu size, and the text is white. So in the next step, I'm just going to add a bunch of code and explain it to you exactly what's going on. Open up some space here, paste it in. All right. So what's going on? This is the drop-down menu, which will get shown once this show mobile menu thing is true. And so the first thing you'll notice is that it is hidden by default, unless, again, we are using the tertiary operator. So on large screen, medium size and bigger, it's always hidden. But on smaller screens, if show mobile menu is true, then don't show it. Then don't do anything, otherwise hide it. And if you don't do anything, then it becomes visible by default. And so when you click this hamburger menu, and this show mobile menu either becomes true or false, depending on its position, you will either get nothing or you will get the hidden keyword for small screens. Whereas for large screens, medium-sized screens and bigger, it's always hidden. I hope this is making sense, right? So for large screens, you never show it. That's because of this code. For small screens, you actually take a look at this variable, the state variable. And if it's true or false, depending on that, you either hide it or you don't hide it, which makes it visible by default. So that's the outer wrapper of our menu items over here. So that's the div from here to here. Now within that, we have the actual menu items, and we have got 2 of these. And I've got these in basically another flex box over here, because I want to have some basic styling applied to both of them. And that is over here. And again, it's a flex box. Background is black to match the menu. X padding of 6, Y padding of 2. So far, so good. Justify everything to the end, so that it's right aligned. It is rounded, and it's in a column. It's a flex, but it's a flex column. So they will be vertically aligned, not horizontally aligned. And then each one of them, let's just take them one by one, because there's a lot going on over here. But it's fairly straightforward. So basically, each one of them, again, has an on-click property, which will, again, flip this particular variable. Now, why are we doing this? Well, if I just go here, if I click it, then it becomes visible. But once I check one of the options, we don't want to leave this open, right? So as soon as I click one of these, it again flips the variable and it goes away, right? So that's why this particular line is required. So if you click this item, and we have it not just here, but also on the second item as well. So if you click any of the items, the show mobile menu, well, you will, again, it will flip from true to false, and it will then hide these menu items. Then we have a class name, which is basically a flex, justify, and to right justify them. And again, we have the same trick that we had up there, right? So you got the router path name, and you're looking for 2, you're trying to match to 2. And if it is the case, then again, we have the same thing. Again, we're not doing underlines here because they don't look nice in a drop-down menu. Instead, we're just making the text red. And then you have the link to the page that we're trying to get to. And the same thing is repeated for the for the link for 3 as well, right? And because of that added now, we have a nice little hamburger menu, 2 and 3. And again, 3 is highlighted, 2 is highlighted, 1 is highlighted. And of course, if you go big, then the whole menu is hidden away and we can navigate in a normal way. And so that's basically our navigation bar completed at this point, and everything is working as advertised. So we talked about the need to have absolute positioning in the enveloping div, which envelops the whole mobile menu. And so let's get rid of it now and see what happens, right? So if I get rid of this absolute right 0, just save it like this, then, and have to go to the mobile size like this, it still shows up, but you can see what happens if we drop down, right? The whole thing expands. It doesn't go outside, it just expands the parent as well. And that's why we need this particular, and just undo it, tag over here, which is again, these are coming out of Tailwind. You need absolute, and that's a little trick that sort of sometimes if you don't know where to look for, it becomes very hard. But once you realize what's going on, it is extremely straightforward. And so that's how this works. Again, the code for this entire thing is on GitHub. The link is in the description. So if you're not able to follow along some steps, or if you don't need to copy paste from the screen, you can just pick up the code and do whatever you like with it. I hope you find this useful in your projects, and happy coding.